So with the core gameplay of our game now complete, we want to do a couple of things to make it feel more like a real game. So for example, we want to be able to show on our screen how many coins we currently have and how far the player has gone into the level. We also want to have a main menu screen that we can use to kind of control the game, and we can use that area to unlock characters and stuff like that. So to understand some of the UI elements within Unity, we're going to first of all start off with the main menu itself. So we're going to load into a new scene. So we're going to go to File, New Scene up here. And you can see that opens up a new little area here. And I'm going to save this scene first of all before we do anything else. Hit Control and S, and we'll save it in the Scenes folder. And we'll save this as Main Menu. So this should be the first thing that anyone sees when they first jump into our game. So on our main menu, there's a couple of basic things we'll want to have. We'll want to have, basically, to start off with, we'll just have a title screen, or a title bit of text that'll say, hey, this is the name of the game. And we'll also have a button that will load us into the main game. So let's start off with just by creating the title text on the screen. So we're going to go into our hierarchy over here, and we're going to right click and hit Create a UI Text. So we right click, go into UI and select text. Now another way to do this would be to go to Game Object up here, then UI and text. So either way you do it will be the exact same thing. So I'm just going to hit this, and what that'll do is it'll create a text object. Now for our purposes here, we can't see anything at the moment. Where has this bit of text gone? We'll visit that in a second, but we'll just take a quick look. First of all, we created this text object. We also created a canvas, which is the area that any UI elements will appear on, and it also created an event system. Now the event system basically is a thing that controls the logic of the menu for navigation. So if you've got a whole bunch of buttons in your game, when you want your players to be able to move up and down between those buttons in, say, a standard PC game or whatever, then your event system is what controls that, and it controls what buttons are selected at this moment in time and stuff like that. But for our purposes, we don't really need to worry about that because this is targeted as a mobile game, so we'll only have tap interactions, so we don't really need to worry about what this does. So we'll leave it here, but just so you're aware of, generally speaking, what it's for. So with our bit of text, we want to find it in the world. So if we double click on it, we'll be taken to where the text is. Now if I just zoom this out, can't actually see it here at all, which is kind of strange. But one of the other things about working with UI is that we want to be able to look at this as like a flat thing. Obviously in this 3D world here, it's not very helpful to be able to look at the UI as a 3D thing, when really the UI should be something that is flat and it overlays over our main screen. So to be able to use the UI, we hit this little 2D button here, and that creates a flat view that we can use to view the whole UI interface. So one other thing we need to do is go to our canvas. If you go to our canvas here, you can see this whole big square here represents the size of the window over here. I'm going to grab our bit of text that we have, and I'm going to drag it into roughly where the UI area is, and you'll see now as we move that into the right area, you can see we've got this new text over here. Oh, I believe this is why we can't see anything. It's because from a previous project that I was working on, my Unity, if we go to layers up here, I have my UI disabled, so we can't actually see where the UI is. So that was why we couldn't see it in the scene view here, is from a previous project that I've worked on. But that's an important thing to note, that you can turn off the UI from being visible in your scene view. And the reason you would do that is because sometimes it can get in the way of your game. For example, when we turned it on there, you can see there's now this white box appears in the scene view. And this white box represents the canvas area. So if I go back to 3D now, you can see we've still got this white box which represents the canvas, but if you're down here somewhere and you're working on your game, having this big massive box can actually be a little bit distracting. So that's okay, we won't worry too much about that, but just so you know, in future you can disable that if you want to, if you're done interacting with your UI. It doesn't turn it off for the game, obviously, you can still see it in the game view here, but for our purposes it's still on here. Okay, so I'm going to switch back to 2D view like this. And now there's one extra thing we need to consider, which is our canvas's size. So by default, your canvas, if we look over to the right over here, we've got the canvas render mode and all this stuff here. We've got a canvas scaler and a graphics raycaster. Now you don't need to worry about what all these things do, but there is one thing we do need to worry about, which is this UI scale mode. So by default, it's set to constant pixel size. We also have scale with screen size, constant physical size. When it goes to this one by default, it's actually kind of the least useful one for our purposes. What it does is it tries to adjust the UI to fit in these objects into the best possible way they can. So, for example, our text object, we can see it's put kind of down here, roughly speaking. But if I go to our game view here and we change our view type, so we'll change to this kind of rotation here like this, you can see our UI bit of text here kind of moves around a little bit. If we change size here, suddenly the UI is off the screen. If we change it to an even smaller size, like this, our UI bit of text is actually completely gone off the screen. So the way Unity kind of tries to adjust these things is not really great for our purposes. How it adjusts those elements that are visible isn't really great. And the reason it does that is kind of because of this constant pixel size element. Instead, what we're going to use is scale with screen size. Actually, before we move on from constant pixel size, I'll just say that this text object here, so the reason it moves off screen like that is because it's got this little pivot thing here. You can see if I click on it, we've got a whole bunch of different objects for basically the center point that we're using for this image. So what this one in the middle basically means is wherever this text object is in relation to the middle of the UI, so in relation to this point here, that's how far away it should always be from the middle. So then when we switch to a different size, so we switch to a slightly smaller size, it's still trying to be roughly the same distance away from this center, but that instead of it being very helpful, what that's doing is pushing the text off the side of the screen. So we don't want that to happen. So what we can do is go back up to the canvas, and instead of it being constant pixel size, we can set it to scale with screen size. And then we're going to set a reference resolution, which is the main resolution we're working at. So we're going to set it to be 1080 by 1920. So now, if you can find a little bit of text, you can see it's there in the middle, exactly where it should be, where we have it placed. But now if I squash down the size, if we go to 480 like this, and if I zoom in, you can still see that the bit of text is still in the correct place where it should be. So if we go even smaller, it's still always in the same place. Even if we change the rotation or anything like that, it's still, if we zoom out here, it's still in the same relative place in our window. And that's really what we want to happen at all times. So we'll pop this back to the default view, and then we can start adjusting the actual text that we're using and laying it out nicely on our screen.